Hey everyone, welcome back. Sorry about the background noise. It is currently that blizzard of 2022 going on out there, and the way the wind's blowing around pretty good, the heater's been kicking on a lot. So today we're going to start building this 9-inch that I talked about in my last video that I posted. So I figure I'm going to just walk everyone through the steps to all of this. I'm going to start with the center section. Once that's built, then I'm going to go over to the housing, and we'll get the bearing assemblies together on the ends, and put the housing in it, slide the shafts in it, and then we'll have a complete axle sitting there, so we're ready to go when it comes time to start mocking it up in the truck. So let's begin. Okay, so how I'm actually going to start this video out is I'm going to get the ring gear starting to warm up in the oven. Now, I have it set for 200 degrees. 200 degrees is not hot enough to worry about annealing the metal. If you were to put this in the oven at like 400 degrees, you would actually anneal the steel, which means you would soften it up. And that is the last thing you want to do with it. Because this is a very hardened piece of steel. If anybody doesn't know a lot about ring and pinions. And when you warm it up like that over an extended period of time, you actually start to soften the metal. So I'm going to give this a quick blow job here with the compressed air and get it in the oven so we don't have styrofoam bits burning off in there. Alright, so for the next step here, while the ring gear is warming up, we're going to get the actual differential carrier ready to go. Like I stated in my last video, this is a Detroit locker. They're pretty aggressive for street use and stuff, but it'll do a good job as far as actually making sure that both tires spin and have traction. So we're going to go ahead and get the bearings pressed onto it, and then we will continue with the ring gear installation after that, after it gives the ring gear a chance to warm up for a bit. Alright, so when it comes time to pressing the bearings on, make sure you put them on in the correct direction, from the small end facing up. And all we're going to do with this, just to get them started at least, is we're going to set the arbor plate, or flat on that arbor plate. Put this next one here, just so everything gets a chance to push nice and evenly. And we're already going a little crooked here, but once we get it started, it's got enough lead on it that it's going to straighten itself out pretty quick and easily. There it goes. Okay, so there's that one. Now, the bearing is not actually pressed all the way. All we've managed to do now is press it flush here. So, I don't know if you can see in the camera here or not. There's just a slight gap between the bearing and the seat on the carrier. So I'm going to get the next one pressed, and then we're going to find a socket that's adequately sized, and I'll use that to press the remainder of the way. The best way to do that would be if you had another bearing kicking around that was the same size, then you had no chance of damaging the race or whatever. And although I'm kind of going against my own rules here, anytime you set up an axle, it's always good to order 2 sets of bearings. And the reason for that is because right here, you could take a new one and use a die grinder, open up the inside of the race a little bit, and then when you press it on, you don't actually start to press the other bearing on, and then just have essentially a cheap set of throwaway bearings that you can use as a way to press stuff. It's not as important on a 9-inch, but when you're doing like your typical a non-third member axle, I should say, when you're setting up, a lot of times, typically, at least when you're setting up your pinion depth and you have shims between the pinion and your inner bearing, the best way to test fit a lot of that is to, again, take a die grinder with like a flap wheel and polish the inside race so it's a few thousandths larger, so it'll actually slip over the pinion. You don't want it sloppy, but you want it just loose enough that you can get it on and off without having to press a bearing back off, because anytime you press a bearing off, you're pretty much guaranteed to destroy it. So now that this is, again, pressed flush, I'm going to go try to find a socket that's the adequate size and continue pushing this down the extra 1/8 of an inch it's got to go. All right, so what I've managed to do is find a 1 5/8 socket from a Harbor Freight 3/4 socket set. So now we're going to use that because it looks like it's sitting on the outer race, but with the chamfer on the socket, it's not actually touching it. And so we're going to just press only on the inner race, push the bearing just that last little bit. And as you saw, that only went about 2.5 pumps. Kind of story of my life. Okay, so now you can see that get the camera to focus here a little bit, but you can see that the carrier actually protrudes a little bit past the bearing, and our gap is gone, so our bearings are totally seated. Alright, so I'm going to put my cleanest TIG welding gloves on here and pull this ring gear out and see if it'll drop down on there. Okay, here we go. All our holes are lined up. Now we'll get the bolt started in it and we're off to the races. Remember to turn the oven off. Alright, so now while the pleated carrier and ring gear are down there cooling down, we're going to work on taking the old center section apart. So you can do this with a brand new one. It's totally fine, but this chunk is one of the more expensive parts of doing a 9-inch, so that's why we're going to reuse it. So we're going to start by just removing the retainers for our bearing caps. Now these are a threaded cap that we'll actually use to adjust the backlash as well as the preload on the bearings. And I'm going to set all these off to the side so we don't mix up where they go, although these are the same part side to side. The next step, before I crack the caps open and take all the pressure off them, I'm going to remove the yoke. So we've got an 1 1/16 socket here in the old Milwaukee. The old pinion nut off. There's our yoke. I do kind of plan on reusing the yoke unless we run into an issue with the drive shaft. Now what I mean is we just had a drive shaft built to go from the Nissan FS5R30A drive tranny in the truck to the 10 bolt rear end, the 7.625 10 bolt that's in the S10 that this is going in. And if I can get away with not having to have it shortened or especially lengthened, I'd like to. Now, this is a really deep yoke. There are different yokes available for it, fortunately. So we'll just have to play around with it and see. Already I can tell we're going to need a conversion U-joint. This appears to be 1330 style because it has the small caps like a 1310, but it's a little wider spread. So, but I won't know until we actually measure it. So we'll set this off to the side, and then we'll get the caps off and the carrier out. Now, because I don't want this to fall straight to the floor when it comes out of here, I'm leaving the bolts loose until I get the caps broke free. There, like that. Now while it's actually supported, I'll take the hardware out. I gotta imagine that'd leave a pretty good chunk on the concrete if this came flying out of there. Now, the one thing you definitely do not want to mix up that is not the same side to side are the bearing caps. These are directional. Think about it kind of like when you line hone a crank and a block, engine block, right? These are torqued in place, and then everything's final machined. So there could be a variant side to side. So it's very important to make sure that they go back where they came up from. Okay, so now that our center section's opened up, we're gonna pick it up, flop it around to this side, and then we're gonna remove the pinion support. Okay, so we got our hardware out. There should be more than this, but see, we're missing a couple. So we're gonna take a hammer and just give this a little tap, help get it broke free. Okay, came out a little harder than I was expecting, but anyways, what we've got here is our complete pinion assembly, and we have a shim on here. This shim is very important. This is what actually adjusts the pinion depth, how deep the pinion is engaged into the ring gear. We're going to keep this and set it aside, and 95% of the time when you're doing this, you can reuse the same shims that were removed, and at least use them as a starting point. When you're setting one up brand new, you know, it's kind of difficult to judge what the right choice to do is. But like I said, anytime we're trying to set up or reuse a rear end, a good starting place is always to use your shims that you remove. All right, so now that we have our clean bare center section, I am going to set this off to the side because we're going to continue disassembling the pinion support and get the pinion removed. Okay, so next step I'm going to do is I'm going to get a chisel and we're going to move the pinion seal. And normally I would throw these right away. I'm going to hold on to it just for now, just in case there's a discrepancy when we go to install our new one. We've got something to match up a new seal to. So now that that is removed, we are going to remove this shim, or sorry, not a shim. This helps to keep oil out from the seal. Okay, so now to get the pinion out of the housing here, because this bearing is actually pressed on just like our inner one was, we're gonna go put this back in the press. We're gonna hold it just from the outside edges here, and we're gonna press the pinion back out. All right, so now because I was a cheap bastard 6 or 7 years ago when I bought this press and got the small 12 ton instead of the bigger 20 ton, the width between our plates here, or our pieces of channel, is too small for the pinion to actually go through, so I can't just set it down on the arbor plates like I was hoping to do. So now we've got this sketchy shit rigged up. But again, like I had said when I pushed the pinion bearing on, there's not a lot of force that's on this. So as long as the plate's straight up and down, everything should be fine. Let's give her a try. Okay, there we go. So let's get that out of the way. And look at that, successfully able to remove it. Okay, so now we've got to get the old races out. It's a good time to inspect all of this stuff, because if you see that you have an issue with the races, you know, where if it's blue, God forbid, where it got super hot, you might want to just consider scrapping all of this, because then there's a chance something may have warped or whatever. But these races actually look perfect. If I was super cheap and lazy and didn't feel like replacing these, I may even reuse them, but that's never a good thing to do because your bearings do kind of wear in and break in together. So I'm going to grab my hammer again and my chisel again and hook onto the inside race here a little bit and give her a couple taps. It's already started to move. And do the same thing and just go back and forth till you walk the race out. Okay, so there's the first race out. Once the first race is out of the way, the second one's much easier to get to. So what I'm actually going to do here is to get this the remainder of the way out. Ooh, hit my tripod. Move this thing a little bit. Open the jaws up here. so now the race can drive out the rest of the way. Okay, perfect. So now our old race is out. All I've got left to do is remove the O-ring that seals it to the center section, like so. And we're gonna just toss that in the trash because we got a new one in our rebuild kit. Okay, so now we've got our pinion support cleaned up here. Before I go ahead and install the new races, it's best to just make sure that they match the old races. So you can see here, this is a Timken bearing. Back, it's probably built when Timken was good. M880010. That's the number on that race. And compare our new ones here. See it, M880010. So, seems silly, but it's worth checking. You'd hate to press everything together and then find out you don't have the correct parts. So, same thing when it comes time to installing the new races. I guess if these were going to drive hard, I would do them in the press, right? But a piece of brass across them so you don't hurt the race at all, and just give these a couple light taps, and it'll seat itself, no problem. It's going in nice and even. Okay, so now for this next part, we are going to grab our old race, and I'm going to grab a flap wheel quick, grind the outside of this race down, so like I can use it like I was explaining before with the carrier, and use it to tap the new one. Actually, you know what? There's enough of a chamfer on that side. I don't even think I need to do that. I take that back. I'm going to tap this in because it really doesn't have far to go. Probably like a 1/16 or so. And there's a pretty substantial chamfer on the end of this race. The issue is you don't want to end up driving your old race in on top of this one and then can't get this one out. So I'm just going to give this another tap here. Put our brass back across here. And you can look from the other side, and we can see that it's seated. Like I said, it really didn't have to go far below that lip. So now I'm just going to repeat the same process. Apparently I'm hitting my tripod again with the vise. But we're just going to repeat the same process for this side. This one, just to gain our extra depth, I'm going to use the race here to help drive it. Well, I decided I'm going to break this video up into a couple different parts just because of the length of everything. So make sure to tune in and check out the next half that I just got done filming. I'm going to work on getting this one put together now, and it's going to cover the issues I ran into when starting to assemble the third member, as well as getting the Grand National style hubs assembled to the axle tubes, and you know, the shafts installed, the brakes, that kind of stuff. So make sure to click that like button, subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't, so you can check out the next video, and you know, leave a comment, let me know what you guys want to see, if there's anything I should have done differently, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully you guys will tune in for the next one, and we'll see you then.